So there's some places where it actually planed, and then there's some lower spots that it hasn't hit yet. So it's pretty easy to see that a lot of this is flat, but some of it's not. Now typically what I do is I flip it over. If it's got most of the material, I'll flip it over and I'll plane on this side to make sure it flattens this side as well. Try and get any warp or anything out of that. What I'd probably do in this situation though is I'll go down once more. I'll take a half turn cut to get the remaining material off to make it completely flat, and then I'll flip it over, and then I'll alternate as I take more material off. Now obviously I've got some live edge on this, and so what I try and do is take mostly off the top to get rid of more of that live edge. So I'll run it through again. What I'm going to do is I take the height handle and I'm going to bring it up a half turn. And that's brought the table up, it's brought it closer to the cutter heads, and now I'm going to send it through, take off another cut. And I'll just keep taking half cuts at a time, half turn of that handle, until I get to the desired thickness that I want. Now on this one, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I'm getting some lines in here that are left on my board. And these lines are from a nick that's in that planer blade. Somebody sent something through with too hard of glue, or there was a rock in there or a nail or something, and it screwed up one of those blades on the bird cutter header. So that's why I have a bump left. There's a gouge in one of the blades, and so it's not cutting as deep. So sometimes you'll have to take a palm sander afterwards to take out some of those lines if your cutter head isn't perfect. On a smaller machine, when you feed it in, this first roller may catch it and it might tip it up just a little bit. So sometimes you have to push it down to re-flatten it so it can go through. However, if you hold on, when it does finally grab, it may smash your finger in there. So if it does catch, make sure your fingers are on top when you push it back down to send it through. On smaller machines, you'll get something called snipe. Snipe is where this distance is thinner than this distance. The reason snipe happens on a machine, or a smaller machine, usually one that's not built as well, is the first roller will grab on and it will tilt this whole head assembly, and then it starts cutting, and then when you get to the other second roller, it lifts up and the whole head is lifted up a little bit. So it was cutting down lower as it passed through this one, and then as it hits the next roller, it lifts this whole head up just a little bit, and so the cutter comes back out and it cuts at a different height, and then this roller will drop back down and it will cut a little bit more on the front and on the back, and you're left with this snipe that won't allow you to glue two pieces together because you have a gap right there now. There are 4 standard ways to get away from the snipe problem. The first option is to run a board through before and after the board that you want to keep. When you send it through before, the first roller eats and the snipe comes out of this board. This gets fed through, and then on the back side, the snipe gets taken out of on the board behind. This one is left fine. Another option is to just cut a board a little longer than you need it, so that the snipe happens on the front and the back, but you can still keep what you want on the inside. Another option is to send your board through, instead of straight, send it through at a little bit of an angle. This way it catches it here, and then as it cuts through, there's not as much snipe when it's at that angle this direction. The last option is to just use a different machine. Use a machine that a bigger machine that's more solid. On some machines it's necessary to tighten the height handle lock between passes so that the table doesn't lower in the process of your board going through there. Now usually I leave that loose because students will forget it's there and then they'll start reefing on the handle. If you're looking for something really precise, you want to tighten that height handle lock in between passes, but just don't forget about it, or else this is going to be real tight to reef on. The planer makes boards smooth and it makes them parallel. It does not make them flat. One of the common misconceptions with a planer is if you send it through, it's going to true your board up and it'll make it flat when it comes out the other side. And it's a misconception because it looks so clean across here. But the truth is, if the board has a little bit of a bow in it, it will go through the planer and it will flatten out because those rollers are so strong, and it will plane it parallel, but when it comes out the other side it will pop back into that curved or bow shape. If you want to take out that bow, you need to use either a joiner, or I'm going to show you another alternative using hot glue and a second board to take out a bow. So here I have a board that has a whole bunch of problems on this side. It's not flat at all. And if I wanted to send this through the planer with this side up, it would go in the planer on this side and the rollers would push it down and it would cut, and then it would pop up on the other side so that it would still keep that bow as it went through. It's also got some twisting to it, and so it would go in through the rollers and the rollers would bend it flat as it went through, but then as it came out the other side it'd still have that twist to it as well. So what I'm going to do is I got a piece of plywood and I'm laying it down on the plywood, and then I'll average these two together to get about the same amount on both sides, so I'm not pushing way down on this side and have a 1/4 inch up on this side. I'll try and average it out. A lot of times I'll put shims under there, just little pieces of scrap wood to help block it up, and then I'll put some put about a 1-inch stripe of hot glue on this side. And I'm making sure I put the glue where the gap is. So if this had the opposite way, where it had a bow this way or a crown, I would make sure I put hot glue underneath so that when I send it through, the rollers wouldn't push it down as it went through this way, and the crown would get pushed down and then pop back up. If I fill underneath, then it just cuts that whole crown right off. And so just with those 4 1-inch pieces, this will be set now so that if I send it through, the rollers will pinch on this side, the glue will hold it in place, and so it will stay at that height and it won't rock forward. And then I can plane this whole side exactly flat, and then once it's flat I will cut off the glue, flip the board over and send it through the planer on the opposite side once this side is completely flat.